All right. Thank you so much for joining, everyone. Hello, I'm Colin. My name is Colin Pierre Larnard. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the manager of Comex and product operations here at Meetup. Welcome to another Meetup Live event. Today, we're joined by LGBTQ plus group organizers, three of them, Doni Burton, Wil Fisher, and Carly Novoselsky, as they share their best practices for crafting a community where members feel welcomed to come as they are. We'll be talking about how they structure their groups to foster acceptance, from finding great venues to fostering discussions where everyone feels included. I'm really glad y'all are here. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to go over a couple of guidelines and the agenda. So first things first, this event will be recorded. You won't appear in the video, however, and your audio will be muted during the event. If you have any questions, feel free to submit any of your questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And we have closed captioning available. If you want to turn it on, click on the live transcription icon at the bottom of your screen, and you can select your preference from there. Cool. All right, so now to our agenda. So we're gonna go into introductions in a second, and followed by that, we will do our little fireside chat, where we'll have a conversation where I'll be asking our panelists some questions, and finally we'll end with some Q&A questions, answers for you, from you. So let's get started. Hello, how's it going?
Awesome.
Thanks for joining me. So first, I would like Doni Burton to introduce yourself. How's it going?
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Doni. My pronouns are she, her. I currently live in Washington, D.C., where I work as a senior consultant in the health insurance industry. I am the creator of the DC Black Queer Women Meetup group. I'm an extrovert, I'm a Libra, and I enjoy bringing people together. So I'm looking forward to this discussion and answering questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doni. All right, Wil Fisher. Nice to meet
Happy
you.
Pride, everyone. My name is Wil Fisher. I use he, they pronouns. I'm based in San Diego, California. I'm a spiritual life coach and executive coach. Before moving to San Diego, I was in New York City, and then I was in upstate New York running a LGBTQ retreat center. And yeah, I love hosting retreats for LGBTQ men. I also host one-on-one personal retreats in my work. And I love hosting meetup stuff with my group, North County LGBTQ Men's Meetup Group.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. All right, Carly Novoselsky. Hello.
Hi, Colin. Thanks for
Hi.
being here, everyone. I'm super excited and happy to be here. My name is Carly Novoselsky. I am a licensed professional counselor and a certified alcohol and drug counselor here in Chicago. So I'm very passionate about the intersection of the queer community and mental health and substance use. And I run Queer Sober Social, which is an awesome, positive, open-minded group for people that are in the queer community and looking to connect outside of bars and clubs without any pressure to drink or use any substances. And we have had an awesome busting community since 2020. So I'm super excited to talk about it. And I am also a huge foodie, so I love to check out all the newest restaurants going on in Chicago.
Awesome. That sounds great. I'm also a foodie, so I'll have to join your group. All right, cool. So thank you for the introductions. I'd love to just jump right into our discussion. We have about 40 minutes to go over these questions. And again, if anyone has other questions you want to ask, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll try to answer them when we're done with our chat. So first of all, I'd love for you all to tell me about your group and the inspiration behind your group and why you chose to host your group on Meetup.
Should any of us just jump in? Yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Wil.
Okay. Well, since I'm unmuted, I'll jump in. So so as I mentioned, I was living in New York City, and then I was living in upstate New York. So New York City, as many folks know, is a pretty big LGBTQ mecca. And then the retreat center I was running was for LGBTQ folks. So I went from lots of gay people to also lots of gay people. And then I landed in San Diego, where I'm from. And there is a pretty large LGBTQ community in San Diego, but it's really focused on the neighborhood in Hillcrest. And I moved to a place near my family. That was a big reason why I came back to San Diego, was to be near my family again. So I was about 30 minutes from the neighborhood and just feeling really isolated and alone and not connecting with my LGBTQ community, the local LGBTQ community. And so my inspiration really came out of that place of need for myself to have community. And so I got it started, and then it turned out that a lot of other folks had that need as well. So people were showing up and expressing that they had a similar experience and that they were also seeking that local LGBTQ community that Meetup was helping me provide.
Thank you. Yeah, it's so interesting because Meetup is great for doing that. Like whenever there's kind of like a gap in, or like a need, if there's a need like for a niche community, Meetup is, if you start a group, typically you'll find your people. So that's a great, I'm glad that worked for you. What about you, Doni?
Yeah, so DC Black Queer Women was created last year. I was new to DC and just looking for community similar to what I had when I was living in Oakland, California. I found that the gay bars or queer spaces sometimes don't necessarily reflect the diversity of the city. And then there are also like queer parties, but I found it difficult to like connect with people, you know, over the loud music, or people tend to go with their partner or their friend group, and it's hard to break the ice. So I decided to create a meetup group just to, you know, kind of allow people to explore DC with me and also find community. It is a trans and non-binary inclusive group. You know, I was super nervous to host my first event, but about 30 people showed up. And so from that point, I
Wow.
decided to start doing monthly events, and that's what was manageable for me. And so I get suggestions and ideas from members. We've had picnics, game nights, happy hour, karaoke night. Went to a sporting event recently. So the group has definitely grown larger, you know, than I ever imagined it would. And it's been really exciting. And I'm looking forward to like continuing to build community and just create more Black joy.
Thank you. That's, I mean, 30 people at your first event. That's incredible. Carly, what about you?
Yeah, so I run Queer Sober Social, like I said, and my inspiration was that I used to work in the restaurant and hospitality industry and had to leave, went on my own sober journey, and tied in with that was like my queer identity as well. But I did not know a single person that was sober, a single person that was queer and sober. So like we're very niche, but I really was just looking to find like-minded people that I could connect with, right? Because there's definitely more sober groups out there, and there's definitely queer groups out there, but there wasn't one that was like together, right? Because a lot of the queer meetups want to go out and party and drink and all that stuff. And the sober groups are great too, but typically there's a lot of, you know, cis, heteronormative, straight individuals in that group. So I really wasn't finding like my people, right? I always heard this thing about like chosen family. And I figured like my value is now recovery and sobriety and like kind of having this healthier, just holistic lifestyle. Where are other people that are like that? There's no like sober bar, right, for us to meet up at. Actually, one of our members of our group has created Chicago's first non-alcoholic bottle shop, which is where we've been having some of our events. So that's really exciting. And I think that through the pandemic, there's been a lot more demand for sober spaces, or at least even sober curious. So it's been really exciting to see us kind of go from in-person events before the pandemic started, switching the script to going virtual and keeping this community going online throughout all of 2020 and 2021, and then coming back in person in 2022 and meeting people that I've known from 2 years online and seeing them in person, and just having even more new people come join our community in person has been just like so gratifying to see. And obviously there's a huge need. We have really great turnout at our events, virtual and in person here in Chicago. And it's just great to see that this community has a space, and, you know, you can be yourself, and you can also be yourself without any substances authentically.
That's the other cool thing about Meetup is that you can get specific. You know, you can have a queer group, you can have a sober group, but you can have a queer sober group, which is cool, and you find your people. So I love that. And it doesn't have, it can be any topic or interest or identity, you know. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing about your group. Another question we have is about why it's so important to be able to provide that that safe space and the safe space of support and acceptance for your community. I mean, it's kind of obvious that it's important, but like, why do you think so?
I would say it's important because of like the political climate and the economy we're currently experiencing right now, as well as the isolation that the pandemic created. I work from home, so I'm not interacting in person as much as I would when I went to the office. So it's nice to know that there are safe spaces for us to exist, to discuss issues that are important to us, and to feel seen. And it's like, you know, not everyone chooses to or has the option or capacity to live out and proud in like every aspect of their life. So these like safe spaces are essential, affirming, and can be life-saving as well.
100% agree with that, of just how important it is to have these spaces where you can just show up as yourself. We've had people in our group, you come and you try different pronouns on, you try different names on, you try different looks on, right? And you're in a very, very just safe community that is so affirming and just like excited for you to see you grow into yourself and change. And just something magical happens when you are surrounded by people that understand and that are not judgmental and are just allowing you to just come be your full self. And we, you know, are just going to support you and love you, right? Which is a lot of community aspect that a lot of LGBTQ folks don't necessarily have growing up or don't have in their, you know, friendships or work environments. So to have these like specially curated spaces with this in mind is super important.
Yeah, I echo all of that. And just to add to it, I feel like so many of us in the LGBTQ community have suffered a lot of wounding in our childhood and our adolescence. And a lot of that comes from feeling like we don't belong and feeling like we can't be ourselves and that it's not safe to be ourselves, and feeling a pressure to conform, to put on a mask and pretend that we are someone that we are not. And so I see one of the main values of spaces that we're creating as a way for people to heal from those old wounds and for them to feel that sense of belonging and feel that sense of safety to be their whole self. And I love what you were saying, Carly, about experimenting too, that, you know, when we're in that space, when we're not feeling like the other, you know, that we can feel like we are connected to this community of like-minded people, we can have that safety to experiment with who we are and how we're showing up. And that is a really expanding opportunity for us.
It's so true. It's empowering to be able to live your authentic life. And so I really appreciate what y'all are doing. I have a question for Wil. I know that you kind of like have clear intentions for your group. But before members even join your group, how do you make it clear on your event page that your group is inclusive and accepting? Because obviously that's really important. What do you have any examples of how you set those you know, expectations and kind of rules?
Yeah, so, you know, in the group description component of the Meetup group, you can describe your group. And so within that, I like to use that word intention and talk about the intentionality of the group and talk about some of the things I just mentioned, which is creating a safe of belonging, creating a safe space for people to show up as they are, you know, in their truth. I also talk about the intention of creating connection and friendships. With some events, I've even gone so far as to say what the intention is not. For example, especially I've found in the LGBTQ men's community, there's a lot of objectification that happens, a lot of sexualization of connection. And so being pretty clear that that's not the intention of the group, that there might be a romantic connection that happens, like that's okay, but that we aren't looking to create another space of objectification and over sexualization. So yeah, just spelling out like what the true intentions of the group are. I talk in my descript about heart-centeredness, I talk about, the different events and what they might create. Some of my events are more playful and outdoorsy and adventurous, whereas some are more deep and focused on creating those deeper levels of connection. So words are our friend when we're creating safe space and intentionality.
That's great. I mean, yeah, it's by setting those intentions, it sounds like you'll find the right people then. It's like you're really attracting the right people to your group and your community. So,
And then when you don't, it's because not everybody reads it. I have had the
right.
experience of someone coming and it being very clear that they were looking for sex. And then as they realized that that wasn't the vibe, they were, sitting in the corner on Grindr and Scruff throughout the meetup. But there was an opportunity for people to just explain, that this isn't the vibe here, but we'd love you to be here and connect and create friendships. And, and then people can self-select out if that's not what they're looking for.
Exactly. I always say it's your group. You can do what you want with it. Don't be scared or afraid to kind of, set those intentions, expectations, and feel empowered to, if you need to remove someone from the group, like, it's your group. So thanks for sharing that. I want to go to a question about similar question, but it's kind of around like rules and regulations that you implement to ensure that your members are respectful to one another and to the group in large. Does anyone have any rules or regulations that you want to share?
Sure. Yeah. So similar to Will, like just being really intentional about what the group is about is really important to us, especially wanting to curate this safe space and wanting people to be respectful and understanding of like, what are we here to do? Like, what is the vibe of the situation? So my host and I, Holly, created a code of conduct that we put together, and it just has some guidelines, just simple things like we're all inclusive, we're considerate and respectful. Just kind of really make it out to be what we're doing here. Like we're supportive, but we're not necessarily a support group. So same thing, like some people come thinking like, oh, we're going to be like an AA meeting or, like a queer processing group therapy kind of situation. And like, that's not necessarily what we're about, right? We really emphasize the social part of queer sober social. So we know that people are on their own recovery journeys and on their own journey in terms of the queer community, but we're just here to like hang out and have fun and talk about normal things like what you're watching, what you're reading, what podcasts, like what fun things you're doing in your free time and things like that. Just like not having the pressure of, oh, like, can I get you a drink while we talk about these things? It's like, just take that kind of off and then we can kind of focus on, what we're there to do.
Nice. What about you, Donnie? Do you have any rules?
Not
Any
necessarily
guidelines?
rules, but yeah, more so guidelines. Like I said, my group is trans and non-binary inclusive, so I encourage people to ask about pronouns. Also, it's really important to center Black queerness. That was the reason that this was created. So I ask, members or guests of members to be mindful and respectful of that. If it's a limited capacity event, like Black queer women should be prioritized and centered. So I've had, people ask if their non-Black partner can come or this, that, the other. And if it's a big event, I don't have issue with it. But if it is a small event, then yeah, I ask people to just respect that, this is an intentional space.
And that's totally okay. Cool. All right. How about when I want to think when thinking about like encouraging members, to make connections with each other. Once you actually have members in your group and after they've joined and attended an event, how do you encourage them to open up and kind of like get to know one another? Does anyone have any tips? Because that can be hard. I mean, I'm an organizer and it's sometimes always hard to, introduce people and, keep the conversation going. But does anyone have any tips for encouraging your members to make connections?
So we're very obsessed with icebreaker questions and like the weirder, the better, and like the deeper, the better kind of, right? So That's really fun, especially like, virtually doing kind of breakout rooms and like mixing up with the fun question. Also in person, just like having little, like, okay, everybody partner up with somebody. Here's the topic. We'll all just talk for like 3 minutes and then we'll all swap kind of a thing. But also as well, like as our events have started to get bigger, I just try to lead by example. I bring name tags and really fun markers so everybody can put their name and their pronouns and just feeling comfortable. So like, okay, I know anybody that's in this area that has a name tag, like is fair game, right? They're all here for the similar reasons that I am. And just being really welcoming, having a big smile on. I know it's really daunting to like show up to a place, to a group that you've never met before, or click on a Zoom and have no idea what's going to happen. So just like being that warm and friendly person that I would wish, would like welcome me at all my, scary events that I might be going to the first time, especially if like I've never met another sober queer person, or like I'm like 2 days sober. Like that's like terrifying. But at the same time, like I really do want to meet other people. So it's like just, like making more seats at the table, making sure everybody feels included and that, like they know what we're here for. And just like, again, like leading like that example, being that person that I want to see at the event.
Yeah, I'll jump in and add, a certain level of facilitation is sometimes an opportunity to get people connected. So, if we're hiking and it seems like everyone's kind of like keeping to their own or just connecting with the person that they came with, to invite it to get mixed up and to invite maybe a prompt, like, find a partner to walk up with the next 10 minutes and talk about blank. So kind of being courageous enough to assert some facilitation, I think can be really helpful. And then on a more casual level, being conscious of who is kind of sticking to themselves, who is kind of just sticking to the person that they came with, and finding opportunities to, bring them into the group, to introduce them to other people, and to, mix it up.
Yeah, and I agree with everything said. To kind of echo that, I do use name tags at my events so that people can, to help people remember names and to help me remember names and pronouns. And it can also kind of help break the ice as well, to see someone's name tag and say, oh, hey, how do you pronounce your name? And that kind of gives people an opening. And then as well as, facilitating if there's someone, isolated, introducing myself to them, kind of getting understanding, like, do they want to be, kind of observing and sitting back, or are they looking for an opening to connect with people, and then offering to introduce them to some regular members or someone else who I met, 5 minutes before, who said they were also new. So yeah, it's just being really observant of the event and the people attending.
Yeah, that's great. Do you keep an eye on Meetup to see who is new? So you can kind of like, or do you just kind of like wing it, at the event?
I do read the statistics provided by Meetup. It is helpful, but also sometimes it's just winging it. I'm good with faces, so it's like, oh, okay, they don't look familiar. I can guess they're new. So, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, we definitely hear some, that need from organizers of, wanting to know who's coming, first of all, but also who's new, so they can kind of put the extra special introduction or welcoming touch to it, which is really important and powerful. So thank you. How about some stories that stick out for you? Any fun stories about members, or things about your group that stand out? I know, Carly, we talked about something.
Yeah, there's so many like fun examples from our group. Like we have done so many silly things. Like there was a day that we went out by the lake and a few of us like jumped in together. Just really fun stuff. So we had some picnics and stuff go on in 2020 and 2021. And ever since we've just been meeting at Eli Tea Bar, which is a queer owned coffee shop. And like I said, DCL and Dry Bar, which is owned by one of the members in our group. So yeah, just making these really fun connections and just being able to take some of the online relationships offline. I was not a believer in like Zoom curated like relationships and friendships happening before the pandemic at all. And I've made some amazing friends. I've made a friend that lives in New Jersey and she's come to Chicago twice. I just went to go visit her. Like we're both just like in disbelief that like you can just jump on a random Zoom one day and like make like a lifelong friend. So that's been really rewarding for me personally to see and experience. And that's kind of my labor of love for wanting to carry on this group, to hold space for other people to be able to make experiences like this for themselves. And I'm seeing it happen. I see friendships happen. I see people going on dates from the group that I've met. I see people dating in full-on relationships from the group because they have these strong values of anytime you walk into a queer sober social meeting, you know, I'm going to meet somebody that prioritizes, or, you know, being queer in a queer space is important to them, and being in a sober space is important to them. And then just like sparks, you know, naturally fly in terms of friendships, relationships, whatever. Just having those two tenets, knowing that everybody around you is feeling that same way, or it has that as marked as an important thing in their life, it just like allows for crazy deep connections to happen in a fast amount of time.
Yeah, that's the nice thing, you know, about these online events, or online events that we that Meetup allowed. Before the pandemic, we were very focused on in-person events, but you know, as this post-COVID kind of world, it's cool to see, you know, that it can be online communities and in-person communities. So how about I have another question. We've talked about like the general positive impact of your groups, and the impact you have on your members, but we haven't really talked about you and like what you get out of your groups. What's the impact that organizing this group has had on you personally? Kind of deep question.
I would say just receiving so much like positive feedback and like so many expressions of gratitude for creating this space has been really fulfilling to me. People like approaching me to ask if I need anything, how they can support me. Like the community, it feels like the community has my back as an organizer. So that's really meaningful to me. I've met some incredible people. Some people have been inspired to start meetup groups as like a subset of my group, which has been amazing. So, and it's also been really good to see people of all ages attend. I feel like that was one of the other things, like with going to parties, you know, it's a lot of 20, 30 somethings, but I find this group I'm meeting, you know, people 40s, 50s that I wouldn't necessarily have crossed paths with otherwise. And so, yeah, I can just say I have found the community that I was looking for and made some great friends.
Yeah, I feel like similarly, it's helped me create community and connect with community, and also to step up as a leader and to really own myself as a leader. I also thought of a quick story that I'll share, which is one of the events I did as we were becoming less stringent around in-person events as COVID was waning, was an event that I still hosted in my backyard, but it was a drag event. And I happen to have a lot of drag stuff. So I, you know, as a coach, a lot of my work is helping people get out of their comfort zone and try new things. And so this was an opportunity to do that. And I just had a bunch of drag in like different stations in my backyard, and people came and experimented with drag. And for many of them, it was their first time ever, you know, putting on a dress and heels. And it was really exciting to see what came out of that, and the level of empowerment that people experienced, and joy and fun. And so that's one of the things that it brings me to, is just the opportunity to experiment with how socially engaged people are, rather than just doing the normal, like, you know, I don't know, meeting up at a bar. It's like being able to like create an experience that's outside of the norm is really exciting for me.
So you must have a lot of clothes if you can have drag stations all around. I love
I
it.
have a lot of drag. I do. Yeah, I've accumulated a garage full. Yeah, over the years.
Yes.
That's amazing. I relate so hard to what both of you all have said. There is just such a core group of us that really bonded over Zoom in 2020 when that was like the only format of community that we had. And that, like, I call them the OGs, right? They're still going strong. They are out there, like, making sure that, the community is up to, par with our, our code of conduct, and they're the ones being that welcoming face at the meetups as well. So it doesn't all just fall on me. It's just been like this curated, really amazing, just group of folks. And kind of what Doni was saying, like, it is so diverse, right? I was really nervous starting this group because I have had folks that approach me that they're like, yeah, like, when something says queer, it's like all lesbians or it's all gay men. And there's not really like, can be awkward not knowing what the kind of mix of orientations is going to be. But for this group, we just have such a diverse, spectrum of gender, spectrum of identities, spectrum of ages, right? And it's just been really cool to see all these people get to meet and connect in a way that they wouldn't have before. And it's not just like, oh, this is like a subset of a queer group. Like, this is truly queer, any identity, any age, anybody can come. And for this group specifically, right, in terms of recovery, when you're in active addiction, you're very isolated. It's very shameful, and there's a lot of guilt that goes into somebody that's actively using. And so the opposite of that is community, is connection. So it's so critical to like keep these spaces going. And it's been just like an honor and a privilege for me to like hold space for so many amazing people and watch them on their journey and watch them just transform and transcend, right, in recovery, and just seeing how not drinking and not using substances and having this community of people that they can be their authentic selves with, like, just, it's just so amazing to see like the group grow. I love being a leader. I love being creative, right, in terms of like where I'm planning the events, what we're doing, and making the posts, and just like, being the facilitator for this group. But at the same time, like, it's so collaborative. Like, I'm not like a dictator by any means. Like, I invite everybody in the group to give me their ideas and just making it come to life, because this space has been so critical and important for me personally, and like the chosen family that I've literally found from this group, and allowing the space for other people to find their connections too is just like it. There's nothing else to describe it. It's just it's the best feeling to be able to do this.
Does anyone have a leadership team on Meetup where you have like co-organizers, assistant organizers, event organizers?
No, I don't, but I feel like I will have a need for it soon.
Yes.
The group is getting so large, it's getting a bit hard for me to manage by myself. So definitely need some like co-hosts, or at least some greeters, volunteers, stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I do sometimes have folks come in and host events through the Meetup. Yeah, it is helpful.
Nice.
Yeah, no, I don't at the time. At this moment, I just use kind of like my core friends that I made from the group are kind of my sounding board, and they back me up in whatever we decide to do. And they always show up. It's amazing. It's really cool. Like, if you build it, they will come, and they come in numbers. So it's like just not being afraid to put yourself out there and find the people that you want, because they're looking for you too. Like, you're running at them as fast as they're running at you. So just find and hold the space, and it'll be amazing what you're capable of creating.
Cool. Nice. I know that, so Carly, you mentioned that you host online events. Do you have any tips for hosting events online? I know that, we hear things about Zoom bombers or inappropriate, just like people who shouldn't be there. Have you ever experienced that, or do you have any tips for people who want to host some online events?
Yeah, I mean, we were really lucky at first. In 2020, like, we weren't that big yet, right? So there weren't that many people drawn to us, but unfortunately we have experienced a few Zoom bombers before. And, the only thing that they want is negative attention, right? So if you just kind of don't give that to them, and I'm pretty quick on the computer, and I have people, in the group that are upholding what they want the space to be, that are messaging me like, hey, it seems like so-and-so might be here for the wrong reasons, kind of a thing. And it's very obvious too. I don't want anybody in here to be like afraid of like, oh, if I go to a meetup, am I going to be like deemed as a bomber? Like, no. Like, they're suing inappropriate inappropriate chat messages, they're saying inappropriate things, but they will be sneaky. Like we have a policy where we want everybody to have their camera on just so we can verify that you are who you say you are. But even that, people will start to like check in and pretend like they're part of the group and then just start saying crazy stuff. And it's like, wow, like you really took the time to like fake pretend that you were in here just to like what, right? So it's like not giving them what they want, which is like creating like this whole negative atmosphere. So it's literally just like, boop, Zoom makes it super easy to just like click and exit them out of the meeting. Zoom takes a screenshot now and it has their face and it reports them. So you just feel very like secure that that's not going to happen again once you kind of get that person out of there. And then just setting up setting up Meetup with some questions and making sure people have a picture and just kind of like making sure that people are in the group for the right reasons as well. So we've kind of had to increase security as the group has gotten larger, but not anything to be afraid of moving forward if you are hosting virtual events, because it's a great way to connect people from all over. Especially we've had people from different countries come and places where they're just like so remote where it's like there's nothing like this out there where I'm from. So it's been really fun to hold the virtual space as well. And like I said before, just like doing breakout rooms, right? Just mixing it up, letting people meet each other in a smaller group format with a fun question, just kind of taking the like, the scariness out of meeting somebody new has been really successful for our virtual meetups.
That's great. I also host online events, and yeah, you just got to be quick with the fingers and the Zoom settings. But in general, what the needs of your events, and what your kind of the format of your event. So like what permissions to disable beforehand and stuff. So there's a lot of, for anyone wondering, there's a lot of Zoom settings you can go into. And also Carly mentioned on Meetup itself, if you want to kind of vet the members who join your group, you can turn on profile questions, you can turn on the member approval. So there's a lot of different things you can do to make sure that your group is safe.
And I'll just say too, we did like so many fun virtual things during the pandemic to entertain ourselves. Like we did like movie watches, and we did that thing where everybody makes a PowerPoint and presents it. Like anything that we could do to amuse ourselves.
Cute.
Like show and tell, like bring some item that's really important to you. We got super creative and it was really fun. And we were able to celebrate like every holiday together. Like, and when, it's really important to hold space for people around the holidays in the queer community because they might have negative interactions with their family. So just knowing like, okay, I'm going to Christmas dinner, but then I'm going to a queersness, Zoom later that night. So it kind of helps like even it out, even when there were the challenges of the pandemic and not being able to meet up in person.
I'm kind of hearing this theme of like chosen family. Does anyone want to talk to that? I'm sure not everyone's like aware of this, but does anyone have experience with that on your group?
Carly, it seems like you've mentioned that a few times. I mean, I can speak about what it is.
I know.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
Well, it's just that often as queer folks, we sometimes because we don't feel comfortable in our families or because we're even rejected by our own families, that we have created this other possibility, which is a chosen family, which is really connecting with people in a more familial way, where it's like, these aren't just your friends, these are like your family. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because I've heard it a few times, and I think it's kind of and it's so ingrained in our community. It has to exist in Meetup groups,
Well, like when I first came out, I heard the phrase chosen family and I was just like, what does that mean? Like, where do you find these people, right? Like, I had no idea. And then it's like, when you start to identify what's important to you and your queer identity and just like really being your authentic self, that is when you're most able to meet other people that are being their authentic self and connect on just this really deep level. And it's not to say that I can't connect with my family on that level, but really they don't understand me in the way that my friends that I've met from this group. And like I said before, like the values of the group and drawing in people that associate with those values, it's just so easy to just go deep and just connect and just be there for people. And like I said, like, I don't know, like families don't necessarily always understand their children and don't know how to support their children and just aren't necessarily like the sounding board for them to be, experimental and creative and changing who they are, and to have a space of people that understand queer issues, that understand what you're going through. Like, it's just so much of a different level of support, and it does feel like a family bond as opposed to more than just a friendship.
Thanks for sharing. I want to shift to in-person locations and events. I know that Carly, you host a lot of online events, but Doni, there's like a reverb echo. Doni, you host events at a venue, and I think Wil, you do as well. But what are some specific things you look for that will make your members feel more comfortable and accepted at a venue?
Yeah, so I kind of have I guess, two different methods of going about finding venues. Obviously, the easiest is choosing a place that I've personally been to before and felt comfortable, or a space that's already queer. However, I do want people to kind of explore DC. So the other method, I guess, is sometimes just walking around a random neighborhood of DC that I've never been to before, looking for a venue. So with that, I feel like it's definitely paying attention to how I feel when I enter the space, the vibe of the space, how the staff treat me there. Because my group is for Black queer women. As someone who's a little bit more masculine of center, I'm kind of perceiving everything that's going on. And so usually I'll ask for the manager and kind of explain that, I host a meetup for Black queer women. Fortunately, I feel DC is very queer friendly, but I often do ask if they've hosted LGBTQ plus events before and how those went. And I ask if they anticipate any issues. Luckily, so far, all of the venues I've hosted in have been very welcoming and accommodating. And I've been able to develop rapport with some of the managers, and I have had a few venues that I've used multiple times now that members have expressed really enjoying and having a good time at. So yeah, I feel like the main thing is just doing a vibe check. Yeah.
Nice. Thanks.
I agree. And that vibe check, as Doni mentioned, is often just saying, I host a LGBTQ event and I'm looking to maybe do it here, and see what their response is. Often for me, it's been like, oh, wow, we would absolutely love to have you guys here. Can we reserve a certain section for you? Or where would you guys want to be? And I often will bring a little rainbow flag so that people can identify where we are. But it also is kind of a declaration of we are here, we are queer, and this is our space. So I often bring that as well.
Carly, did you do any in-person events? I missed that.
Yeah, so very similar to what Doni and Wil have said. I look for just queer-owned places in Chicago. Unfortunately, there's a lot. So just already knowing that, all right, the space is queer, but we're going to bring the sober vibe, or the space is, sober, but we're going to bring the queer vibe, kind of a thing. So just really working within also the members of our group and seeing where they have connections as well. So one of our members, they work at a pickleball court. So we were able to rent that out and do a little fun sporting event. So same thing, we brought the rainbow flag, put our stake in the ground. So it's been really fun to do that too. Wow.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any more questions from me, but I think there's a bunch of questions from our audience. So let me check and see what kind of Q&A we got. Cool. All right. First question we have is from Joe S. And feel free, anyone, to jump in and answer. Joe says, "Hi all, I'm a straight male who's accepting of all people. Wondering what your best advice would be for someone like me wanting to meet new friends, namely in the LGBTQ plus community. I'm new to this as I grew up in a small conservative town, and I want to be supportive and open to new things. Thanks." Wow, great question, Joe. Feel free to, anyone wants to answer that question. He's wondering what your best advice would be for someone like me wanting to meet new friends, namely in the LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah, so I'll share that. although some of our events are really targeted for LGBTQ men, we do sometimes host events that are really inviting all men. And it's primarily LGBTQ men who show up. And then we do get some straight men who show up as well. And that's often a really good opportunity for someone like that to feel connected to the LGBTQ community in a safe, comfortable way. And to, in some ways experience what it feels like for us sometimes where we're the other, right? It's like suddenly like it's 8 LGBTQ men and 2 straight men, right? And so to be in that environment, I think is a healing and healthy experience too. But then outside of that, I'd say, connecting with their local LGBTQ center and supporting those events and looking into the LGBTQ nonprofits that exist in their city and going and supporting those and attending them and really engaging with the community in a intentional way.
And now that it's Pride Month, there's got to be some sort of Pride events happening, hopefully near you. Yeah, great question. I'm going to jump to the next question. This is from Nikki. Hello, I run a new queer women's group in the Los Angeles area, but having a hard time getting people to sign up. Any advice on how to reach more people?
I'll field that one. I think when I started my group, I was just so I have like the Meetup and I have like an Instagram for the group. So going to other events where I think there might be, my target audience there and just kind of spreading the word and sharing, any flyers I make with my friends, telling them to tell everyone. And yeah, don't be afraid to just, use multiple platforms, I guess, to reach people.
Really good advice. Yeah, I've heard a lot of, this is kind of geared more towards like members on Meetup, this question, but I've heard a lot of organizers, if you need ideas for what events to host, you kind of look at like what people are already doing, and not that you are like taking that, you can just kind of like use that as inspiration. And so, I think that's great advice for members as well.
One of the tactics I took too was connecting with the LGBTQ center in my area. So like San Diego has their big one, and then our area has a small one. But my Meetup became a resource for them. So when people would come and say, "Hey, we're the LGBTQ people here," they would refer people to me and connect them with me. And so, that's another opportunity, is working with your center if your city has one.
Nice. Cool. I'll jump to the next question. This is from Amber. How did you build an authentic community? What social channels are you on to grow your community other than Meetup? Oh, good question. Does anyone use a platform other than Meetup to reach people in the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, so I'm very similar to Doni in that we also have an Instagram for our group, and it's really easy to just like also connect with other groups that are similar, and just like, again, building that rapport, even with like the locations that you want to have events and things like that, and just getting the word out. So social media is a great tool to connect and just like put your group out there. I think we also have a Facebook as well, and you can link your Instagram post to just like go out to both. So it makes it really easy.
I believe on Meetup you can like link your Instagram or your social media to your profile. Does anyone do that, or any tips for that? Because sometimes like you have a personal profile and then you might have like the group Instagram that you might not feel comfortable like linking, but any tips for that? Because I know like for me, my profile is like Colin, but if I have my Meetup group with like my Instagram, like maybe I want to link it. But do you do that, Carly, or is it
Yeah, so we have a separate, like it's our
Okay,
own Instagram, which we post all of our events on, which is cool too.
got it.
And like when you post events and just it's cool to see the groups that repost your events. So then you can also like link with them. So it's just this like kind of ripple effect once you start putting yourself out there. I make all of our flyers on Canva, which is really fun and easy to use. So highly recommend that as well.
I love Canva. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I use Canva also. And yeah, I feel like I've found like sharing flyers. I have like maybe 3 or 4 other meetup type orgs, I guess, that are queer, trans, like BIPOC centered. So we all tend to share each other's flyers on stories, so that, because it's like I want to share my knowledge of events. So it's like it's not just me doing this. There are other activities because I know mine's only monthly, and some people, are looking for something weekly. So to let people know there are other options.
Yeah, and I have a Facebook group, and I do see that it helps foster that community. People post stories, that relate to the community in the area, and conversations happen there too sometimes.
Nice.
I totally forgot to mention, we also have a Discord channel that we started
Ooh.
in like the core of the pandemic. So I had no idea what that was, but we can keep conversations going, kind of what Doni was saying. Like when we only have our virtual meetings now once a month, you can keep offline conversations going online, in between meetups, which has been really nice to keep members connected to.
Great. That's good advice. Okay, how about this one? Julian asks, finding and attracting chosen family. What's been a useful process for you? That includes removing some people from your group who you don't feel like you can connect as you wish to. Interesting question. That's a tough one. A useful process for finding and attracting your chosen family, and maybe a scenario of like, if you need to remove someone from your group who you don't feel like you can connect to.
Well, I think maybe to clarify, and Carly, I don't want to misquote you, but I don't think we necessarily mean that everyone in our meetup group is chosen family. So I don't know if we need, I don't know how helpful it is to have an expectation that the whole meetup is going to be super, super connected. I mean, there's many members who probably haven't met each other in my meetup group because they just haven't been to the same events. So I think when we were talking about chosen family, it's just one possible byproduct of bringing a bunch of like-minded people is that some people might find their, maybe 3 to 5 people who are like the chosen family. Yeah, I'll just share that.
That's excellent clarification. Because like you might not connect with every single person in your group, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Other people might find their own chosen family within your meetup group. So
Yeah, and it's also just welcoming people at their level of comfort. Like some people are going to probably spend the first few times that they come kind of to themselves or connecting on a more surface level. And it takes time to build that trust and that connection.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I would add, I mean, I haven't had to remove anyone from my group yet, so fingers crossed
Good.
that doesn't have to happen. Everyone's been cool, respectful. So yeah, and I think it's just mostly about making connection. I can say as an organizer, like I don't think that, yeah, I have a chosen family out of my meetup group, but I do have some really great friends. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. It takes time to build the chosen family aspect, and that's not at all what I went into doing this meetup to find, but it's just been a like really beautiful byproduct. But we've also been around for longer, right? We have been through the trenches of the pandemic, which I think also bonded us a lot deeper. So just knowing that is possible. But yeah, again, we have not had to remove anybody from our group besides the very obvious, very offensive Zoom bombers that are not abiding by our community guidelines. But other than that, everyone is always welcome. And what you do outside of the group, like we're just like a meeting point, right? Like, so if you connect with somebody and they want to introduce you to their chosen family, or you want to meet their friends or their family or whatever, like, all these little things can like be offshoots of the connections that happen at the group, which is great.
Teresa asks, I have a meetup for loners who want to get out of the house more, but not rush into socializing. What advice do you have to make sure people are comfortable and don't feel obligated to be a social butterfly? We are loners, just trying to improve our social life, though. Interesting question. What advice to make sure people are comfortable and don't feel obligated to be a social butterfly?
Yeah, first of all, I want to commend them for taking on that demographic. It's like, to say like loners and now we're gonna meet is could be challenging. And I would say choosing activities that support that, right? So activities that don't necessitate a lot of interaction, like going to the movies, for example. You just sit next to each other and watch. Even a hike can feel more comfortable sometimes if you're really just focused on the hike and less on the interaction. So, creating opportunities that aren't, like a drag event, for example, things that are like, are very big and bold, maybe starting really in comfortable modalities of connection.
Yeah, I think like hikes are a great idea. Everyone can kind of walk at their own pace. If they want to talk to people, they can, but you're kind of out in nature. So I think that's good, as well as, movies or comedy shows or something. It's like you're sitting with people, but it's, people, there's an event happening, so you don't necessarily have to converse.
Yeah, they don't feel like pressured to like socialize the entire time or whatever. That's good advice. I have one from Andrew. This is a good one. I'm curious to know if your groups are public or private on Meetup, and what are your thoughts about public versus private groups? I don't know if you use those group settings.
Yeah, I don't know. I think mine's public. Meaning that anyone can find it, right? So anyone who's in my area who might search LGBTQ and is going to find it. That's my aim, is to have it so that someone who has just moved here, who does a quick Meetup search, can find it.
Cool. Sounds like
Yeah,
everyone's is private or public.
Yeah, mine is public as well. And so is our Instagram page. So I think we have a lot of followers or people who maybe are more so allies on Instagram versus like Meetup. It's just strictly like the demographic. So yeah, that's just something to consider.
Yeah, so our public and private settings, basically having your group public means that other people can kind of see what's happening in the group, more details. Private, it's like they can't see who's in it, can't see the members, they can't see like where the event is, not like all the upcoming events. And Andrew clarified, he said, my group is currently public, but I've received some feedback from people who are uncomfortable with the public setting because the group is in Idaho, so there's more conservative political settings in Idaho. But it's an interesting perspective because I guess it's because if the group is public, then theoretically someone can see that this person is in the group.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for just answering my questions and for being you. I'm going to I'm just gonna close it off here. So yeah, thanks for joining. And I really do appreciate you joining us and sharing your experience. I think it's super valuable. I'm just gonna go and share the last few slides before we end. So I'd like to share this about our TikTok. Meetup is now on TikTok. Feel free to check it out. Follow us. Our handle is @Meetup. We post fun and engaging content on there. You don't want to miss out on it. And as a reminder, you can view a recap of this event in a few days on our Community Matters blog at meetup.com/blog. But yeah, thanks again for joining us. I want everyone to stay safe, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you. Have a good day. Have a good night. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Colin.
Yeah, thanks, Colin. That was great.
All right,
Nice to meet you
bye.
guys.